folks. Welcome to another edition of the Omnist Hour. I'm going to continue with some different music for today's talk. This one we're going to be kind of returning to something that we talked a couple of episodes about before, but it was not covered till towards the end when people were complaining that the sound was cutting out and they weren't able to watch the end. And it's a topic that's really important that I think needs to be covered again. So we're going to be talking in a less scientific, less expository way about where creation's headed now. Okay, I'm going to call this one. By the way, if you're wondering what that nice music is, that is available on archive.org as an unlocked recording. It's Les Brown and his Band of Renown, some of the greatest music of the big band era. Okay, so I'm going to call this one A New Life for Old Gods, the Future of Religious Cults. Okay, so we're not going to back up very far today. Bear with me. What's different now? Now, as I've been teaching, we're in a very special time. We are at the completion of an experiment that has been going on for a long time to basically develop a multiverse of virtual realities and a system for sorting souls into the virtual reality that they need to go. They want to go. They deserve to go. It's a system based upon karma, which is what we've been working on defining. Basically is, what is karma? How do you measure it? How does it work? And how do we determine from karma, the individual karma of the individual soul, which is a quantum of consciousness, a unit of thought. This is what is fundamental, not matter and energy. Thought energy is fundamental. How to manifest individual thoughts within the framework of this spiritual multiverse. And this is what's been happening all throughout time. Every time and space that has ever existed is all about refining this system, making new versions of it. And as I told you, there really was no such thing as a Big Bang since the first Big Bang. The first version of the multiverse was the one that looked like a Big Bang. And every other version that's been installed since, remember, this is a virtual reality. You install a new environment. A new environment has new characters, new storylines. It's already been planned by the designer. This is how new video games come out. You should be familiar with this process, folks. There are stock characters you can play, or you can roll your own. But in the spiritual multiverse, getting to roll your own is not something everybody gets to do. That's something you only get to do within your own universe. And you don't get control of your own universe until you earn it through playing the game. Because once you have your own universe, you have your own virtual reality to create. And if you get access to that before you're ready, you're liable to create something pretty dystopian and not very healthy for the souls that get trapped in your version of perfection. Okay? So you've got to throw out everything that most religions have taught you about God. God was not perfect. God was not all-knowing. God started out basically the same level as every other soul. A unit of consciousness. And God was just the first unit of consciousness that developed the ability to create virtual realities. Now, nobody can create single-handedly a virtual reality as complex as the world we see around us. It takes a lot of helpers. And this is what the whole game has been about, is making versions of a virtual reality with a group of helpers associated with making that part of the virtual reality. And one of those helpers is the adversary, which tries to tear apart your creation. Because if you don't have pressure against creation, you just get a bunch of nonsense, right? Pie in the sky nonsense that has no purpose, no form, no reason for being. And if you don't have a reason for being, you lose interest in the game, right? The game becomes too easy. And anyone who likes to play a good game knows that if it's too easy, nobody wants to play after a while. That's why adults don't like to play the simplest child's games. Once you get how Chutes and Ladders works, it's just a matter of rolling dice and following the instructions of the game, and it's kind of boring. The games that retain their funness as you get older are the ones that have an element of chance, an element of strategy, bluffing. All of these things that we enjoy that make the game exciting and unpredictable. And this is what creation is all about. It's not about making everything work according to schedule, like some materialist scientists would like to believe everything works. Now, there are parts of it that work that way. And that's part of the design. That's part of what happens with each version of the simulation multiverse, is the pieces that are getting boring, nobody wants to play anymore, you automate. You just fill those pieces with stock characters and move on to scenarios that are more fun, more exciting. I tell you that the most exciting scenario has been, for the last many thousands of years, the development of the human species. It's been exciting not only for the human species, but it's been pretty exciting for the other species that were chosen before humanity. Okay, so the upshot of it is we're done with this development phase. The development has been happening centered on this solar system. In fact, this planet and this human species that we are in. Most of the people listening to this probably are. I'm sure there are some non-humans listening to this too and finding it maybe as fascinating as anybody else. Okay, so now that we're done testing all this, how do we know we're done? Well, we were waiting for a special set of events to happen. The Messiah had to be born. The incarnation of God, not Jesus, not the Jewish Messiah, not the Mahdi. Those are all pieces of the puzzle that all fit together into what's happening right now. And depending on which one of those pieces you're more engaged in, you might be involved in a different one of the major plot lines going on during this, I like to call it the Apocalypso Dance Contest. Some are very wrapped up in what's going on in Israel. Some are very wrapped up in what's going on in Beijing or Washington D.C. or Europe or wherever. Every one of these stories is a culmination of some vision that some chosen people have had for their people, their nation, their race. And, kind of like if you've ever played Monopoly with some really good players, you know that it gets pretty nasty. Or Risk is another game that can get pretty nasty. Everybody trying to conquer the world, and if you're playing with good players, they gang up against each other, and everybody's so intent on not losing that they kind of lose sight of how you win as a species. And when that involves other species that aren't on this world, you're playing multi-dimensional Risk, if you will. You can get players outside of the playing field that are playing a game on a whole different dimension, a whole different level, and this is the situation we're in today. It's not been easy. It's not supposed to be easy. It's not supposed to be a game you can win, because this universe is for testing. We completed the test, the big picture test of the Gaia experiment. The Messiah has woken up, fully awakened, understands what the plan is, can see the signs that, okay, this high-level scenario is done. There are other lower-level things that are playing out. And I can't tell you how those lower-level things are in. I'm not going to end. I can't tell you if the biblical prophecy of, the Armageddon and the third temple or any of that bullshit that's in the Bible is going to fall out the way it did in this universe or any other. And that's kind of what I wanted to get into today. What happens on a lower level to the old gods? And I can tell you that the God of the Bible is not God. Maybe God is mentioned in places, but the God of the Bible, the God of the Old Testament, as many people surmised, is the God of this universe. A very materialistic God, a God that is very possessive, and that is not God with a capital G. That's a lesser God. That's actually the Lord of this universe is Lucifer. This is one of God's better children, actually. Lucifer likes law and order. That's why Lucifer's been working to develop the laws of physics and chemistry and restricting what souls can do, so that this testing universe that he runs will be a good gauge of whether souls are good or evil, whether they deserve a promotion, or whether, you know what, I've seen a million of these ones before, let's send them back to the source, because they're just another non-player character, as far as I'm concerned. And that's how Lucifer views this game. And there are Luciferian agendas at play. the whole story of the Old Testament is basically a capturing of a Luciferian agenda. Luciferian gods are focused on this material universe. They have no concept of another universe, or if they do, it's basically, okay, if you follow all the rules, if you follow the 10 Commandments to the letter, if you're absolutely pure like Noah was, or Lot, then maybe you'll get sucked up to heaven like Enoch. Okay? That's a very elitist and exclusive kind of view of things. That's not how it really works, and I'm here to tell you how it really works. And you've got the New Testament God, Jesus, which there's a lot of good stuff there, don't get me wrong. There's more truth there than is in the Old Testament, at least in terms of how God works, how heaven works, how karma works. But there's problems with the Christian doctrine too, because some of it basically tells you, oh, you can do anything you want as long as you render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. Just follow the rules, play the game, and just be a nice guy. And as we know, nice guys often finish last. If you turn the other cheek to somebody who likes slapping, you're just going to get slapped more. And that's not good. That's not noble. Allowing narcissists to get away with basically evil things encourages them to do more evil. So many Christians who kind of take this laid-back attitude of, well, I'm just, let them do what they want to do. I'm going to be a pure Christian and go to church and follow the dogma of my particular denomination, and I'm not going to watch anywhere else because that's their business. That's not a very healthy thing. These people that think like that raise pretty narcissistic children. They enable and encourage childish delusions to grow into adult mental illness. And this is what's happened with the folks that have been encouraging and enabling anti-human agendas, okay? A human is a soul vehicle that reproduces sexually. If you are encouraging your kids to exhibit behaviors that inhibit their ability to carry their genes on and to perpetuate the species that you belong in, you are not serving that species. And that's a very dark way to live your life, as if you hate your own species, as if you hate your own planet. Okay? As if it doesn't matter. Those are all really dark ways to live an incarnation. It is a virtual reality, but if you don't take it seriously and learn from it, you're blowing the whole point of being incarnated. It's a game, but it's a game that's meant to be fun and educational. If you only focus on the fun part, you're wasting the opportunity to have a human soul vehicle. Okay, so now that this high-level game is done, what's going to be different? That's what we're going to talk about today. With each installation of a major version of time-space, the highest heaven gets remodeled. Remodeled according to the new center point of time-space. Now, the center point of this new time-space is the lifetime of the Messiah. The midlife point, where, in fact, if you look at that midlife point, this was around the late 70s, early 80s. By the 90s, things were really going pretty bad. And if you look at what's happened culturally in the chosen people society, which is the United States, the U.S. was the chosen people for this last phase of this experiment. They were building on the shoulders of other chosen people. The English were chosen. That's why you got Shakespeare. That's why you got the King James Version of the Bible. It wasn't perfection, but they were the chosen people, and they generated some incredible individuals. So did all the other chosen people. There were chosen people that were chosen because of their artistic merit. That's how you got folks like the Dutch masters for their literary or musical merit. That's how you got Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, Tchaikovsky. Everybody's gotten a chance to be chosen for some reason at some point. But this final round, where we succeeded in finishing the testing of karma, which, as I told you, has been about, basically the biggest change is, why should we have to wait till somebody dies physically to judge them? If they've already fallen so far from the path, it's kind of cruel to keep them inflicting damage on themselves and others. And so now souls can transmigrate midstream. Now that would be kind of discombobulating to everybody around them, so what happens is they get swapped with an NPC, a stand-in, that looks, acts, and behaves like them, except for a few programming changes to make sure that they don't fall off the wagon of what they were supposed to do in the role that they chose, or they fell into. And that falling off the wagon depends on where they're at. Because this key time, this big experiment, was based on a core set of major characters that had to happen, had to have certain life shapes, accomplish certain things. The most important of which was, of course, the Messiah. Because it takes a very special individual to wake up to all of the pieces of the puzzle and put it all together in a way that can say, yes, I see what's going on, I know what the game is, I can describe it in detail, and I can show you why the game is finished, this phase of the game. Why we're ready to let this new version of karma out of the lab. And this solar system, this planet, this species, you can think of as a science lab. A science lab of spiritual science. A lab that's gone through a lot of experiments on the way to finishing it. Okay, so this central time defines what the highest heaven looks like, because the highest heaven should match the optimal culture, the point at which, you know what, everything kind of devolves from this high point of culture. This is, you're never going to make a version of English that's better than what you have now. You can make new slang versions, You can bastardize it. You can add all sorts of crap. But it's only going to be tearing apart something that's pretty well perfect. You're never going to have a new version of God that's any better than the one you got right now. How do you know that? Because when you hit this perfect time, when this experiment is done, you have a time space that has no bounds. And that's what we're in the process of discovering. As we look further and further back, we're finding, time is older than we thought it was. And that's what they're discovering with the James Webb Space Telescope, that, oh, crap. It's looking like some of these galaxies we're observing are older than the Big Bang. What's up with that? And there's all kinds of theories going around about that. You have that happening in archaeology and geology, where we thought we knew what the history of this planet was, and we're discovering it's much more nuanced and complex than we thought. And, so we've gone within the last 2,000 years from a strong belief that the world was only 6,000 years old, and everything started with Adam and Eve or something like that, to a much more nuanced story that seems to involve I wouldn't call it maybe interference, or the influence of some other species that may have been far more advanced than us technologically and or spiritually. And this is basically a huge area of exploration right now among those who are religious in a traditional sense, or religious in a New Age sense. And this whole thing is becoming very politicized, just like every religion has before. And the truth sellers, the truth seekers, are being overshadowed by those who want to take what they shared, the prophecies, the science, whatever that the noble souls are telling, just the truth. This is what I know, this is what I've discovered, this is what I've proven, this is what I've experienced. And they are mapping that onto a political agenda. This is exactly how you know we've already passed the point that was the center of this messianic age. And the American century was a messianic age, just as many others have been before. Okay, so what does this center point look like? Well, the good culture, the place that was the most healthy in all of human history, was suburban America. Between about the 60s to late 80s, before the country was destroyed by counterculture completely. And counterculture is not necessarily a bad thing. When it becomes bad is when it's destructive. Okay, when the point of culture is not just to poke fun at or question, but becomes a matter of cancellation and destruction, that's the difference between creative culture and destructive culture. And we've definitely shifted over to destructive. And you can see it most clearly in music. If you follow the music industry and where it went from, say, the 50s to the 90s, you will see that there was a transition between positive, hopeful, uniting music in America, and divisive, dark, cynical, nihilistic, hateful music. I mean, basically the whole rap culture is sick. Those guys were talking about raping hoes and causing mayhem, being entitled to do evil just because I'm black was kind of the center message of rapism. And then, oh, that got popular with the white boys too, and they started misbehaving and making the whole culture, even of the the Midwestern schools, be just as unhealthy with date rape and of course that was all helped by all the drugs that were being pushed into society, both from the pharmaceutical side and from our enemies, who have absolutely been pushing drugs. The latest is fentanyl, and it all comes from China, our #1 enemy, and the worst culture on the planet. Atheism is evil. Communism is evil. Capitalist atheists are just as evil. That's what we call crony globalists. And they are absolutely in league with the Chinese Communist Party, at least were until Xi started going off the rails and not being so nice and helpful as the previous regimes in China had been. They have been working together to basically enslave the human species after they depopulate it and replace most of it with automation. This is their plan. It's no secret. They are getting people to actively participate in this dark plan, and they have been selling it through culture, evil culture, for a long time, telling you, oh, there's too many people. We can't use cars anymore. We've got to use electric vehicles. Not bothering to tell people that actually we solved most of the problems with the combustion engine, and they're pretty efficient now. They don't generate a lot of pollution. What does generate a lot of environmental damage and pollution is how they produce energy in China, and how they produce rare earth metals in China. They are poisoning people in China so that you can be happy until they want to start poisoning you. And that's what they were doing during the pandemic era. That's what they've been doing through the food industry. They have been lowering your fertility. They have been increasing the incidence of long-term health issues, which will bankrupt you, bankrupt your family, get all the money flowing towards the big globalist corporations who run everything. And they're trying to destroy smaller businesses that operate locally. That's what's been going on here, folks. That's how you know that you're living on the other side of this dark time. Now, you could say, oh, the sky is falling, blah, blah, blah. Well, you have to understand that that's the viewpoint of a materialist. Okay? There will be these cycles between basically a messianic period and an anti-messianic period. This is how Lucifer's universe works. It's a battle. It's a spiritual battle. And it will always be a battle. But it's not just cyclical. It's not the same thing happening over and over again. Every time we come up with a better version of God, a better version of the other players in the game, we push the adversary away. And we've done such a good job of that we don't need to play that game here anymore. We need to, as a group, say, no more. No more tyranny. We're not going for it. Because you know what? For every tyrant, real tyrant that is going to push some narcissistic megalomaniac agenda to their grave, there are 1,000 people that just want to get on with their life and live in peace and harmony with the folks around them. That's not going to happen with wishful thinking. And these cults that are, oh, universal love, we just need to meditate our way to perfection. The evil will go away. There's no such thing as evil. It's just we don't understand it. These are actually psyops of the adversary. This is another evidence, in fact, the popularity of these cults, like the woke cult, like the cosmic oneness cult. This is showing that things are really getting bad. Okay, we've got to shut these people down. If you want this universe to get better, you've got to oppose tyranny. You can't let it slide. And that starts in the nursery. That's what was great about this time, is in middle class America, typical suburb America, yeah, there were a few more wealthy families, the doctors, the lawyers. There weren't so many politicians, and they weren't so wealthy. There wasn't this scheme of get rich quick by letting people buy your vote as much as there is now. Certainly not at the local level, even if it was pretty predominant at the federal level. Okay, so this is what the highest heaven looks like. It's just a place like that perfect midpoint time. And every one of these houses is one of the senior creators' place. They go home, and inside their house, it's something different. It's what they want their universe to be like. Okay, so let's see what that might look like in practice. Let me get my slides up here. Okay, so while you may have this idyllic Leave It to Beaver kind of world on the outside, and yes, this will be enforced. The culture, when you go out your door, you need to basically obey the laws of a typical American community of that era. You need to be nice to your neighbors. You need to keep your yard up, or somebody's going to come by and tell you, you know what, this is an eyesore. You got to clean this up. Now the difference will be that it won't be a matter of, well, I can't afford to clean it up, because everybody here is in heaven. They have the power to obey God's rules, and God decides what heaven looks like in the public spaces that we share. Okay, in this era, the public spaces will be showing movies. They will have drive-in movies. They will have movie theaters. They will have performance theaters. They will have places where you can go see live music without getting poisoned by a bunch of smoke that you don't want, or whatever. I mean, there will be elements of technology that did not exist in this time, but there won't be the destructive culture that developed after this point. Why? Because this will be a place where we're raising children. All of the gods there will be raising children. There will be different kinds of gods there who have a different specialty. Let's go back here. This is what it looks like in one representation. Okay, so this new highest heaven, you're going to have godly senior specialty creators who are basically balanced. They sort of think like God. So they're the ones that are planning new virtual realities for other souls to experience. More balanced virtual realities that have, you know, basically trying to give a new place where you can have a shared culture that is healthy. They might have a different idea of what this special healthy place looks like than, you know, 1960s, 1970s small town America. And that's fine. If they can attract people to come there, they will have souls living in their universe. And they may go out and recruit more. And that's what I'm showing here is their, you know, their inside universe. When you go inside their house, it may be like fabled Baghdad of 1001 Arabian Nights. It may be like Star Trek. It may be a very exclusive place where the machine elves and other species like them that like to plan and work on deep scientific problems all hang out together, playing their games. Okay, there's going to be other gods there that have more of a karmic focus. They provide basically R&R for souls of a certain type. So, you know, some may prefer to go to a heaven that's kind of like a rainbow fantasy land, based upon a certain historical era or a certain set of novels or whatever, the Tolkien universe or whatever. They may want to just live in a family community, everybody having a good time, cooking and having picnics and whatever. They might want to live in a futuristic virtual reality world where, you know, basically they create their own world around them. And it's a very, looks like a pretty lonely place, but maybe that's what some souls need when they need to take a break from having to deal with physical incarnation, all the pressures of physics and chemistry. So, you know, this would be maybe attractive to people that like the idea of the metaverse and wish, oh, you know, metaverse would be perfect if I didn't have to worry about eating or sleeping or doing anything but poking at this sphere of virtual reality that's the metaverse. I don't know. There are other places there that represent Luciferian ideals. So like the heaven of Ezekiel, where everybody worships the one most high, and you know, you're organized in choirs of angels and stuff like that. Okay, that still is a useful place, so long as the god of this, Lucifer, is running it in a karmically good way. Basically, obeying karma in terms of what souls get to play in their universe and which ones they send to this, to be maybe members of this God universe. Okay, what role, you know, you're going to be sending people from these other universes out into this environment. What role are they going to play? This environment has a lot of roles. The highest heaven, let's get to where we're just viewing that one slide. Okay, there are souls in all of these roles here. And sometimes when you get your first chance to go to the highest heaven, you might have to play a blade of grass. You might have to be a street sweeper. You might have to be a baker or a butcher or whatever role in this place as your service to the Most High, as your service to God. This is how you prove you're ready to be at the God level. You've got to humble yourself. And that's what these higher gods that have the houses are essentially doing. They are, within their universe, evaluating their candidates and saying, you know, I think this one is ready to be promoted. And they basically send them out the door, and then karma decides what part of this highest heaven they have to serve in based upon what they've done. Okay, so obviously if the soul is kind of inclined towards domineering, inclined towards being a more Luciferian soul, they might be called on to serve as something not very fun. The the janitor, the street sweeper, whatever. Something that will be more humbling. If their focus is artistic, depending on what their artistry is, they may be the local town baker, or they may participate in the symphony, or they may be one of the filmmakers in this idealistic heavenly town. And that's kind of how it works. Let's go back to this other slide there. If they are more of the Borgian Me Too variety, a god of non-player characters, if you will, they might just have a passion that's not very realistic or serviceable, but at least they're not doing any harm. So you might the Borgian gods might be cosmic bakers who love making cookies, and they make cookies for this town. Their cookies may not be the most original, but there may be some people that like their cookies because that's what they're used to. There may be other bakers that are more avant-garde, and that's why there needs to be more than one baker in the town. There needs to be more than one brand. This is the nonsense of globalism. This is the nonsense of communism. These anti-God cults of one. What's good for, what I think is good for everyone. This is nonsense. This is anti-creative. This creates brittle, unhappy societies. And the highest heaven is not a brittle, unhappy society anymore. There may have been eras when it was. And that's why we have been changing this highest heaven. At some point, maybe it was a more Luciferian version. At some point, maybe it got too idealistic. At some point, it got too Me Too-ish, would let anybody in. And that's what we've been honing by testing out karma in this test tube, so that this final version of the highest heaven supports worlds without end. I'm almost done, okay? What you need? Okay, so I'm going to wrap up pretty soon. Basically, what I want to go with before I end is, well, what happened to the old versions of heaven? Okay, the old versions of heaven were based upon old versions of space-time, time-space. Those still exist. They still have their version of God. And if you want to play their game, you can keep on playing their game. But you don't have access to this new, improved time-space. Okay? If you want to play the Christian game, if you want to play the Muslim game, you're going to probably end up in this other time-space. And you're going to see the limitations of that, because there's a certain time where those worlds break down. Okay? If you look at Christianity, there was a time where it was a positive force, and then there was a time where it started breaking down. And that's when it started splitting. People said, no more of this. I'm gonna be a Christian in a different way because I don't like the Catholic Church. It's become non-productive. It's become counterproductive. It's become against everything that I would think would be godly. Okay? I'm not dissing Catholics. I'm not dissing any religion. If you want to stay devoted to your dogma, there is a place for you in the multiverse. But you're not going to get to play in this highest heaven. And your God, your version of God, your version of Allah, your version of Jesus, of Buddha, of Vishnu, Shiva, whatever god or goddess you worship, is not going to be able to play this game unless they graduate again, unless they're admitted back into the fellowship of heaven. And that is up to karma. What happens is that as this new time space emerges, this new highest heaven, there will be some of these old gods that, you know what, you're still valid, you still work. These certain denominations of Christianity, these group of Catholics, this group of Muslims, this group of whatever, are people that will fit in here. And that is the version of their religion that will persist, that will be welcomed here. There will be other versions that are stuck in previous versions of karma. And they will have to, if they keep following their God and their God refuses to reincarnate, to go pay their dues like God did and advance again in the new version of karma to show that they understand how karma works. They don't get reconnected here. Their house basically may be there, but no one's home. That's kind of how you could see it. There may be, the Islamic house. Nobody's home because Islam is so far off the rails that they're still living in an old time space. And if that's what they want to do, they will see their apocalypse happen. The same with Christians. These older prophecies of apocalypse and complete destruction and horrible this, horrible that, that's what you will get if you don't graduate. You're going to experience pain and suffering. You're going to keep coming back to the same version of a particular messianic age. Now, this is the newest version of this messianic age, but it exists in previous versions. The previous high point was basically the height of the British Empire. That was another messianic age. If you're wrapped up in the whole Zionist thing, that's the apocalypse that you're going to face. It's a dark, dark one that might destroy that whole world. Nobody's going to force you to experience that, but you will choose it based upon your choice of religion. If you choose one of these exclusive religions, it's my one or no one. My God is the only one that's valid. Or if you choose one of the darker religions that, every God is valid, or there's no such thing as God, or there's no such thing as evil, or I actually like evil. Okay, those are not going to get an opening to this highest heaven. And your experience will match that. Your virtual reality will fit the crime. That's how hells work. And you don't blame God for that. You've been given every opportunity to understand how the game works to the best of the ability of the latest Messiah to describe it in a language in the language of the time. Jesus was not a successful Messiah, not for lack of trying, but because the time was not ready. They didn't have the language, they didn't have the science to describe what I'm telling you. In fact, there are technological civilizations that existed that had the language, maybe had the science, but they couldn't put it together with the spiritual component. They knew how to maybe do warp drive. They knew how to shift between dimensions, but they didn't know why it worked. They just assumed, okay, when I do this with certain chemicals, a certain combination of equipment, I'm able to transit long distances. But their understanding of it was very technical, kind of like the old Star Trek. It just works. And if you asked anybody to explain it, it would be like, well, I don't know, it's magic. And a lot of what happened in the Star Trek series was basically magic. Well, magic is spiritual technology that works. And it changes. And it's different in different universes. In the physical universe of Lucifer, it's very limited by the proven laws of physics and chemistry. But it can be violated by those who have a pass, if you will. And that pass is basically what karma allows, and Lucifer allows. And it's Lucifer's job is to test, and karma's job is to judge. They allow evil into that universe. They control it. They have allowed evil into this planet, this testing planet, so that they could test out all the corner cases of the new version of karma. Now the next day of creation is going to be basically rolling this out and cleaning up the lab. And it's not just this lab, there's a whole series of labs. Let's end up on this slide. Okay, this game has been going on a long time. We first had to make a multiverse. Then we had to make universes. So the multiverse is basically a thought. Oh, God's thought, I'm going to make a multiverse. Then we have universes. This is the physical implementation. Within that universe, then, we had to develop galaxies, star clusters, star systems, planets, species, races, people, messianic bloodlines, candidates, and finally we have this fully awakened Messiah. Now we've got to unwind all of this process that we took to develop this system of reincarnation and karma. Roll it out, and that's going to take time. It's going to take 5 more days of creation. Let's see. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 5 more days of creation. Because we got a lot of work to do. What evil was allowed to happen in the earlier days of creation made a time-space base of a certain size. The size of Lucifer's universe at the time that the game started is basically where the last remnants of the adversary are hanging out. And as I was trying to convey, I think last time or the time before, because time-space is bigger now, all of these new things that came into existence are obeying the new version of karma. So we've got basically a two-prong attack that we're going to be going into. And this is what I haven't really drilled in yet, and will give you hope that even though things look really bleak, fighting evil from the inside out, we've got all these new friends that are discovering the rest of the multiverse. They're discovering the rest of this universe and learning how to play it. And this ties in with what I was telling a couple of sessions ago about these light orbs. These are mostly new souls of this light orb vehicle, which was actually the first chosen species. But the ones that are still inside the first space-time were corrupted. They didn't work. That's why they didn't stay the chosen species. They had evil. They treated each other badly. They misused their powers. Okay? There's only a few of those left. And they don't actually live here. They are already, in order to stay in that form, they have had to leave this planet. They have had to leave this system, and they are basically the entities, the hive mind entities that are working against the better species of this galaxy. Because this inner place is this galaxy. Once this galaxy was formed, we started doing smaller and smaller things, and outside it, new versions of karma were being installed. And there's less evil progressively as you go outside this galaxy. So it's going to get easier with time, not harder, to drive away evil. We're still going to have this spiritual battle because some souls like a good fight. And we're not, the whole point is to make existence interesting and instructive for souls of all levels. That's what creation is all about. And not every soul is exactly the same. Not everybody wants peace. Some souls find peace extremely boring. Or they find the kind of laws that you need to have to ensure peace to be kind of draconian and enforce them in a little box of behavior that they don't like. Okay? That's why we have a multiverse. That's why we have different gods. There's no one religion that's perfect. The religion of God, the real God, doesn't need any believers. It's a science. This is the way it works. And if you want to worship any other God, that's the way you get to this highest heaven. You don't go directly through God. You go through this system of demigods. And you find one that works for you, that supports the kind of soul you want to be. If you want to be an artist, if you want to be a scientist, if you want to be an administrator, if you want to be a healer, there are different paths that work better for those different paths. And so long as any traditional religion or new religion serves a particular path well and doesn't encourage evil, doesn't encourage tyranny, those are essentially good religions. Go for it. And this is the essence of what I've been teaching since I started this channel. That's what I call the omnist way. You can be an omnist Christian. You can be an omnist Muslim. You can be an omnist anything as long as you support this idea that you cannot force your religion on others, and no religion is perfect. No vision of God is perfect. Even the real God is not perfect. Not everybody belongs in this highest heaven. It's very difficult to get in. And it's got a set of laws that it needs to have to maintain this perfect time space. this world without end, universes without limits, no beginning, no end, complete expansion. And we can observe that. Cosmologists know that things are expanding and they're accelerating. And they're going to keep accelerating. And they're going to be so discombobulated because the Big Bang doesn't make any sense. And they'll eventually come to realize that what I'm saying is science, spiritual science. And they'll come to realize that we do live in a simulation multiverse. But it's a simulation with a purpose, not a dark purpose. Not like the Matrix, although there are some universes of some gods that are run like the Matrix. And they are trying to recruit souls desperately for their universe, because they know that their recruiting is going to be severely curtailed as this game goes on. They're like trying to build a bulwark of souls so they can keep their scam going. The way you got to see it. And that's okay. You know, if God were a tyrant, he would be as bad as them. This is the game you got to play if you want to have free will. If you want to have a God that's not a tyrant, if you want to have a God that's tolerant, if you want to have a God that accepts that other perfections might be just as perfect as mine, this is the system. It's logical. You can go through everything I've told you and try to poke a single logical or scientifically inconsistent thing that I'm saying. And it's going to be what eventually all scientists will agree, yes, that's the only possible answer. And it really won't change their life much at all, because they'll still have their own preferences. They'll still have their own idea of, well, I don't care if Christianity isn't the absolute truth. I like going to my church and I like hearing these scriptures, and I don't want to hear anybody else's. Fine. As long as you're not pushing it on other people, as long as you're not forcing it on your whole community or anything, fine. That's what freedom of religion is all about. And the only beliefs and religions that should not be allowed, must not be allowed, are destructive ones. Anything based upon the idea that you have to destroy to build back better is evil, is stupid. If you're such a bad creator that you have to destroy something that's working instead of taking what's working and building on it, if you have to throw the baby out with the bathwater, like some abortionists think is a great idea, I'm sorry, you're not playing on the good side. You're not playing on the side of creation. You're playing in a Lilithian evil God system. And you're gradually, if you keep on playing that game, you're going to get more and more isolated from all the other good souls. You'll end up with a bunch of destructive twats who are fighting over who gets to destroy everybody else first. Now, that is what a Matrix universe really looks like. It is far more dystopian than the movie. You've got evil people running around trying to kill each other, wanting to be the number one, wanting to figure out who the god is so we can knock them off and replace them. And that's actually how these older gods get to the point where they start playing the game again. Because eventually somebody will knock them off, will become the most evil one in their universe and get everybody worshiping them instead. And at that point, they will basically want to die, and they will die, and they will be reborn, and they will reincarnate, and then maybe they'll get a chance to be better. Or they will reassimilate with the Borg and become a non-player character. The game works perfectly. It doesn't achieve perfection. No soul will ever be perfect. But it works perfectly to allow souls to perfect themselves as much as they would like to, and to isolate souls from others that they don't want to be around, that they don't think are perfect, that they think are as imperfect as could possibly be. And I'm just telling you that what the highest heaven looks like is not because God is a bastard, not because God hates rap music, though he does. It's because this is the healthiest place to raise children. And here's the point I want to leave you with. You remember in the Bible, there's a section about the sons of God finding favor, finding the daughters of men interesting. This is a process that happens again and again as a new version of God installs a new center point for heaven. Let's maybe get back to this. Lead with this. As this is established, there will be children born in heaven. There will be children born to these other gods who are open for business, and they will be raised in this environment. This perfect environment for raising healthy, happy, normal human beings. The best environment that humanity has ever come up with for raising pretty good people, with some perfections that weren't there at the time. Because this is heaven, it can be what you want it to be, what God wants it to be. These children raised here will be the new sons of God and daughters. They will be sons of gods. Some of them will be sons and daughters of God. And once they're born here, they will then start their own journey. Some of them will be allowed to stay here. Others will be encouraged to go on journeys with groups from this highest heaven who have a particular interest. Those journeys will take them to different times and spaces where they will set off new messianic ages in different species, different planets, wherever they happen to be needed. And this is how it's going to work from now on. They will have to incarnate, they will have to spend some time fighting evil to learn what their soul is all about, because each new soul is an individual quantum of consciousness. They will have the DNA of their parents, who will be residents of this complex, if you will. But they will be trained in this complex, and they will have new souls who have basically earned the award to be born to parents in heaven, in the highest heaven. How do you earn that reward? You earn it through service elsewhere in other universes. This is basically what was tried to be conveyed in the idea of becoming a monk or a nun. Where the Catholic Church went bonko is in thinking that meant you had to not have children. No, the point was setting up an environment where children could be raised in the most holy way you could. And that includes having sex. It basically is a system of orphanages, and that's what the better monasteries and abbeys actually did. They didn't care if the priests got married. They didn't care if the nuns got married. In fact, the best ones had a mixed, generally with more women, because women are better at raising kids, and that's what the whole point of the nuns, of the abbeys and the monasteries is to raise kids who were more godly than the kids that were out in the outside, and they would be a good influence. This is another example of the as above, so below principle. You need to organize your godly spaces in Lucifer's universe like the highest heaven. If you want to have great kids, raise them on the messaging of this great era, or some great era that is better suited to your particular culture. Every chosen people had a great era, a time where their people were the most productive, the most open and enlightened society. Whatever that was, try to raise your kids that way. Try to set up orphanages that way. Set up Planned Parenthood that way instead of the nonsense that feeds organ harvesting right now, which is exactly what they do. That's why they want your fetuses, so they can use them for medical research. So they can use them to make things like the mRNA vaccines. That's exactly how they made those vaccines. That's exactly how they make humanized mice to test them on and make sure that the diseases they're creating and the vaccines they're creating do what they want to people. And I'm telling you, there's some big evil there that's going to be coming out. It's already coming out. People who know what's going on have seen the score. So I'll leave you with that. This is what it is. Believe me or not. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you believe. It's not a matter of belief. This is science. And I challenge anybody to challenge my science. Prove scientifically that anything I'm telling you on this channel is wrong. And I will amend it. I've amended my message a number of times based on new information. A lot of what I'm telling you now is an outgrowth of new discoveries from the James Webb Space Telescope, or from discoveries in particle physics or whatever. I keep up with a lot of science. So I know what I'm talking about. I have a degree in physics. I went to Princeton, started graduate school. I kind of lost interest there. I spent most of my life in the engineering world, designing and testing things, both hardware and software, and organizations. And then I spent a while in acting, so I know a lot about psychology, a lot about human behavior. I've covered strange bases to get where I'm at so I could actually understand all this, and I've paid for it since I got the first downloads of what I'm sharing with you. It's been 6-7 years now. It's taken that long to fully process it, and only in the last 3 or 4 months have I been completely clued in to what's going on and able to share this level of detail. So take it or leave it. It really doesn't matter to me. There's people that want to throw darts at me or put me down or call me crazy, or I just don't care at this point. I really don't. I know where I'm headed, and I'm going to have a little house there. And inside that house, I've decided that I'm going to kind of make a mixture of styles. I kind of like the idea of the inside being sort of like the Baghdad of 1001 Arabian Nights, a healthier, nicer place where there wasn't a lot of poverty, there wasn't a lot of difference between the rich and poor. I don't like that. part of it, I think, is going to be kind of like Star Trek, where, you know, my team are going to be like the Star Trek crew that go out and explore places, both in the future and the past, depending on what I'm more interested in that day. And my best buddies and I will wear whatever uniforms we want to and go play Star Trek games when we feel like it. There's going to be probably rooms that are more like this, where I can just kind of free float in my own space, get some privacy, and explore knowledge at my fingertips. Essentially, infinite knowledge, because that's what you find in the mind of God. You know, when I want to have an outing, I might go find a place that's like this. Go visit a friend maybe that is a famed naturist. That's all available here. It's an incredible place, and I'm going to be there. And I hope I will meet some of you there if you deserve it. But they don't call it the highest heaven for nothing. It's not where everyone goes. That's a children's fairy tale. There are many heavens, many hells, and the highest heaven is for God-level souls. The ones that have earned their spurs. Well, that's about all there is to say there. Like, share, subscribe, throw darts, anything you want to do. I think the next month or two is going to be pretty interesting. And I will end with saying, do look up. Happy Karma.